Hello, good evening, everyone. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing. Thank you. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey?
Here.
Vice Mayor Magazine?
Here.
Councilmember McMahon? Here. Councilmember Charno?
Here.
Councilmember Friedel?
Present.
Councilmember Spellich?
Present.
Councilmember Grzybowski?
Present.
Thank you very much. We start with our reports. Town manager, do you have anything?
Mayor, I just wanted to comment that, and I'm sure it's going to come up in the other comments, but we had a spectacular concourse in the hills over the weekend, and beautiful weather. You just can't ask for a better event, and the weekend, I think, just brought a lot of people into our town that have never been here. What a great way to showcase our community.
Thank you.
Good evening. The past couple of weeks, I've attended a board meeting of the East Valley Partnership. I attended the Maricopa County Association of Governments Economic Council meeting, some legislative calls, also our Traffic and Safety Committee meeting, and our CARES Forum meeting, that we were meeting about the future topics that we will bring to the community to provide education to them. The first event is going to be April 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the Community Center, and the topic is going to be changing the way people think, talk, and act about dementia. It's going to be interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I, too, attended the concourse in the hills, and thousands of people there, and probably thousands of cars I'd like to have, but probably not in this lifetime anyway. So a big shout out to Peter Volney and his group for another wonderful event. I also attended a chamber stakeholder meeting where they had a great meeting talking about Fountain Hills Day, which is coming up, and I know the town's going to be intricately involved in that. And I also attended a regional domestic violence council meeting, and just so we are aware, we did get a link put onto our website for AZ Point, which is a electronic way to file a domestic violence report if anybody has a need for that. And one thing I picked up was that 30% of the deaths due to domestic violence are over age 50, which I had no idea it was that high for that age group. So it's good that we're involved with that. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Mike, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I, too, was at the Fountain Hills CARES event meeting, and want to thank Councilwoman McMahon for her efforts in lining up our main speaker. I was at the Traffic and Safety Committee meeting as well. Stopped at Concourse in the Hills briefly. My son was actually part of one of the exhibitions down there for Polestar, one of the new electric vehicles, so it was kind of fun seeing him down there. And the Drug Coalition had a booth at the Teen Takeover event, and we were one of the main sponsors for the event, and had the giant inflatables there, which were a big hit. And poor Jennifer was running around the community center like a mother hen, just concerned about her refurbished community center. But everything went well, and commend the Community Services Department and all their work on that event. And then finally, Noon Kiwanis had our annual Super Pancake Breakfast Sunday morning before the Super Bowl, and had a good turnout. So I want to thank everyone for coming to that.
Thank you, Mike. Council? Vice Mayor? Councilman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too attended the concourse in the hills. I'm a classic car collector, and I'm saving up for the Ferrari I'm going to buy with the $400 a month I make sitting on the council. I'm almost there. So I took it upon myself. Peter Volney and I are friends, and I called Peter and had a meeting with him just to give you guys some numbers of what the concourse in the hills does for Fountain Hills. The estimated figures that he had as of Thursday were between 1,100 and 1,200 cars paid and were registered at the hills. The attendance was estimated at 50,000. They put a drone up, and they said that the attendance was about 50,000. That's the largest crowd that they have ever seen. In 2020, they raised $262,000. In 2021, there was COVID, so there was nothing. In 2022, it isn't totaled yet, but they're at $430,000 right now raised. Peter Volney pledged to the Phoenix Children's Hospital that he would raise $1 million and donate $1 million to the hospital within 7 years. He's accomplished that in 5 years. So hats off to him. I also spoke with local restaurant owners who said that they set all-time sales records for restaurant sales with food and beverage. They said they have never had a day in the history of their restaurant business that they made more money. Peter also asked me to personally compliment Linda Ayers from our community, or Parks and Rec, Kevin Snipes, Joe Bouvet. For those of you who don't know Joe, I didn't know what Joe's real name was. He's Fountain Joe. So Fountain Joe, and of course Rachel Goodwin, who heads everything. He then told me, he shared with me that there is a book that classic car collectors get. I don't get this, I get Road and Track, which is a cocktail book that goes all over the world to very high-end classic car collectors. Fountain Hills has their own page. So not only America, but this goes all over the world. So the amount of publicity that the concourse and Peter has brought to the town is just absolutely invaluable. So I want to personally thank Peter for starting this and for the town staff who's helped him create this. And it just absolutely keeps growing and growing. So hats off to him.
I attended the Phoenix East Valley Infrastructure and Transportation Committee meeting and the 2 weekly legislative calls, and I won't talk about those because, you know, they just make me cranky. Saturday the 5th, Community Services had 2 really well-attended events. The first one was the Skateboard Classic, and there were 31 registered, there were 31 registered across all of the age divisions. And it was co-sponsored by Musco Lighting. If you remember, they're the ones that were involved in the mini pitch. That's such a weird name for a soccer field for me. And evidently there was about 250 people in attendance for this thing, which is kind of crazy. So they're really excited about how it turned out. Then Mike's already mentioned the Youth Council, Mayor's Youth Council Teen Takeover, which was the same night. And evidently, they had about, I want to say 125, 150 people in attendance for that as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Yeah, that was neat. So yesterday, of course, Valentine's Day was Arizona's 110th birthday. So I can't believe it was a decade ago that we had our big centennial celebration here, did the Centennial Circle. Glenn Atchison was part of that. He was so wonderful, and the late Jerry Miles, so many people had such a big part in that. So it's kind of unbelievable. It was 10 years ago, and we'll be honoring Glenn's sister-in-law later today. I finally got to go to that Coyotes game that we were going to do with our Canadian residents after a 2-year delay. Despite the score, or maybe because of it, because we were playing Calgary, everybody had a great time. And I really want to thank our economic development specialist, Eric, for taking this on. This is, like I said, it was 2 years in the making, so we finally got to do that. We had meetings with the school district, we had meetings with sister cities, Fountain Hills Cares, pedestrian traffic safety, And I got to be at the Mayor's Youth Council. Cade allowed me to draw the first winning number, so they gave out a lot of prizes, and that was due to a lot of great sponsors, so we really appreciate that. And of course, the beautiful weather at the concourse. Again, thanks to Peter and all the sponsors. That was just a beautiful event. I saw Judy Yates. I guess we kind of combined the median activities. And just like you said, David, I was there at lunchtime, and to just see all that bustling in the restaurants, everything was just thriving and going so well. So, and of course, it was a great day for car enthusiasts and anybody that likes 80 degrees in February, because we also had that. So it was really, really neat. I wanted to mention Cox Communication has been going through town doing updates, and when they do, though, it's an outage. So just make sure you keep an eye on it. I think we're going to put something on the website. I know, like, I have it coming this weekend, or this week, and they're going to put something on the door, but just be aware that they're going to try to do it at night, but I don't think it's always going to happen that way. So, but this should help for, all of the demand and all of the COVID-related, everybody staying inside to do work and to do schoolwork. So we appreciate that they're doing that. Is that it then? Anybody have anything else? Oh, go ahead. Yes, of course.
Sorry, and I also wanted to thank Chief Ott from the Fountain Hills Fire Department for the American flag displayed off the hook and ladder. That walking up and seeing that with the fountain in the background and all the cars, it was spectacular. So thanks to the chief for making that happen.
That was beautiful. Next, we're going to do our Stellar Students of the Month. So what I do, kids, is I read your name up here. I read what your teachers and people at your school say about you, and then Angela will give you your certificate, and then I'll come down and Bob will take a picture for the time. So we are going to start with Azealia Perez from McDowell Mountain Elementary School. Azealia, you here? Well, we'll read. Azealia has been all right, yeah. Azealia has been a stellar since she got here midway through first semester. She's always does her very best on her academic schoolwork. She's extremely polite and considerate of others. She always is there to help others with academics or when someone needs a friend. Azealia is always kind and courteous to her fellow classmates. In character class, she's always paying attention to what we're working on. She's always there when help is needed. That's Azealia. Next, also from McDowell Mountain, we have Easton Jones. Easton is always a stellar student in the character classroom and in his regular classroom, too. He's such a hard worker and does his best to stay on task. He's kind to others. He's the first one to offer help to a friend or a classmate whenever it's needed. Easton has shown great leadership in class, and he steps in without being asked when someone needs a partner. His kindness shows in everything he does. That's Easton. Moving to the middle school, we have Allison Jarrett. Allison? Hi. Allison is an extremely bright and hardworking student. She is one of the most inquisitive students we have ever taught. Wow. We love her positive attitude and her joy for learning. The joy that she brings to school every day is contagious, and we love having her as part of our 8th grade family. Allison. Also from middle school is Christian Kaufman. Christian? All right. Christian has made amazing strides in his first year here at Fountain Hills Middle School. We have loved watching him become a strong student who cares about his academics and the goals he has set in front of him. We're excited to see what Christian does with the opportunities in front of him. Christian Kaufman. Dakota Delker from the high school. Dakota, hi. Dakota is a very studious student. They often earn a perfect score. They always are engaged in class and complete all assignments on time. Dakota has a quiet nature and may not initiate interactions, but they're kind and respectful to all. That's Dakota. And last but not least, Cooper Loyette. Cooper, woo. Ready to go there. Cooper has a fun and lighthearted attitude, but he's also very responsible in his studies and enthusiastic about his successes. He's a great role model for his peers and is well liked by his classmates. He has shown a willingness to work with everyone. Cooper Loyette. Hello. I'm just going to stay here because we have a lot of cool things to do. So next we're going to recognize Jesse Brunswick, who's a Planning and Zoning Commissioner. I don't know, is Jesse here? Yes, hi. Welcome. Let me give you this. You can hold it, and I'll read about you. Jesse served on the Planning and Zoning Commission from November 2020 until January 2022. We appreciate her time and dedication. And everybody here. We appreciate her time and dedication to various issues brought before the commission that required skillful decision-making, and she was especially appreciated and helpful for her parliamentary expertise. So we thank you, Jesse Brunswick, for your service to the town. Thank you so much. It's up to you.
I would encourage anybody not to wait till your particular issue comes, but to participate in the town. I've always been devoted wherever I've lived, not only to the community, but the people that we serve. And I know that everyone on the council feels the same way. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So now we're going to do Skip the Straw Day. Is Jesse and Barrett Brote here? All right, there we go. Do you want to come up too, Mom? Okay. She's going to take the picture. So here, I'm going to give that to you. It's nice to meet you in person instead of on TV. I'll read it, and then we'll get a picture, and then you can say a few words if you'd like. Okay. All right. So, whereas in 2017, amid frequent conversations about the potentially fatal effects of plastic waste for ocean creatures, a group of teenage activists called the Coral Keepers established National Skip the Straw Day to recur every fourth Friday in February. And whereas these high school students from Whitehall, Michigan, decided to establish a day in order to educate others about the many biodegradable alternatives to these, I love this, small but potent cylindrical sippers. And whereas local student Barrett Brote embarked on a school project to reduce single straw use in our town's restaurants and businesses, and whereas by taking a positive, community-oriented approach, what starts as a playful task soon blossoms into an educational opportunity about how we can band together to effect meaningful changes in the daily lives with the goal of protecting our environment. And whereas we recognize the importance of recycling and appreciate the sustainability efforts of all our Fountain Hills citizens, now, therefore, please join me, Barrett Brote, and our neighbors in promoting National No Straw Day on Friday, February 25th, 2022, and ask our fellow residents to tip the glass and skip the straw. All right. Want to say something about it? Have you gone to the restaurants already?
Not yet, but we're going to.
All right, she's coming. Thank you. And last but not least, we have our Sally Atchison. You come on up, and I'll give this to you, and I'll read this proclamation, and then you can say a few words, if you like, to your community of 50 years. So, whereas 50 years ago, on February 12th, 1972, Sally Atchison and her family started a new chapter in their lives, moving to Calaveras Avenue in the brand new community of Fountain Hills. And whereas Sally was attracted to the beauty of the location and the extraordinary fountain, the heart of our community, and maintains her love for Fountain Hills, stating we are a vibrant and involved hometown with warm people, incredible weather, and views. And whereas on hikes, this was interesting, she used to come upon deer and other wildlife at watering holes, evidence of the ranching that preceded development, and swim, fish, kayak, and make campfires along the Verde. There were no landlines, so to communicate, she and her family drove to the phone booth at Saguaro and Shea. And whereas they were committed to this newfound community and became very involved, particularly in the arts. Her husband Tony and Sally were active in the building of the community center, and Sally's happy to have been a contributor to our sculpture collection and especially gratified to find the female military sculpture for the Veterans Memorial. And whereas as a talented artist herself, Sally is involved in our thriving art community as a partner in the Fountain Hills Artist Gallery and an officer in the Fountain Hills Art League. She appreciates the many neighbors who are committed to our community garden, our Fountain Hills Theater, Dark Skies, schools, clubs, and groups, and with the town's continued support of the arts. And whereas Sally's a longtime member and current treasurer of the Fountain Hills Herb Society and loves cooking, fermenting, I'll have to ask you about that one, sprouting, and experimenting. And whereas the Fountain Hills Presbyterian Church was founded by her late brother-in-law, Glenn Atchison, in 1974, who first laid eyes on Fountain Hills when he flew in to marry Tony and Sally in 1972. Truly a momentous occasion for them personally and for our entire community, the beginning of a founding family. I, Mayor Ginny Dickey, on behalf of the town of Fountain Hills, declare February 12th, 2022, Sally Atchison Day in recognition of her family's move to Fountain Hills 50 years ago, and invite all of you to join me and us to congratulate Sally and thank her and her family for their service to community. She says thank you. She's thrilled, and she's going to go out and celebrate with her friends. Well, that's a good way to start a meeting off. Next, we have our scheduled public appearances, so good stuff is going to continue. We have Republic Services Grant Awards, and I think Grady's going to kick it off.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We're very pleased to be able to make a presentation tonight, but we couldn't do this, of course, without Republic Services. Since 2011, the town of Fountain Hills has contracted with Republic Services to be our official solid waste provider. And we have probably one of the most unique municipal contracts in that each year, Republic Services agrees to provide $10,000 for a community-based and go through the process. I'd also like to recognize in the back of the room, we have Sadiq Young, who is the general manager for Republic Services. We're pleased to have you here tonight. And also Stephen Herring, who's the government relations director, and he was actually the one that was working behind the scenes with Eric on this program. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Prochnow.
Thank you, Grady. Mayor and Council, this year we had 10 applications submitted to this grant program. And again, emphasizing the priorities of this program, they were focused on stewardship of the environment, educational purposes, and enhancing the quality of life. So with that, a grant review committee was formed and comprised of representatives from both the Republic Services and town staff. This committee had the tough job of scoring applicants based on each applicant's ability to create an impact on the community, as well as align their projects with the priorities of the grant program. So with that, I wanted to acknowledge the hard work for our grant review committee this year. They had many competitive applications to review and score. And with that, we're happy to announce that we'll be awarding 5 organizations with grants tonight. So with that, if I could have Mayor Dickey, Stephen Herring, and Sadiq, if you can come join me here at the front, we'll present the awards at the podium and take some pictures as well. Okay. And just a side note, once everyone has received their grant, their award, if you can gather over here on this side for a group picture, that'd be great. So we'll introduce everyone individually here and then gather for a group picture after that. So I'd like to present the first award to the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale in the amount of $3,500. And I believe we have Liz Byron and Lauren Stratton here to receive this award. Awesome. Cool. And then the next award will be going to Fountain Hills Youth Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition in the amount of $3,500 as well. And we have some board members here to receive that award, I believe. Oh, come on down. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. All right, the next award is the Fountain Hills Theater in the amount of $1,000, and I believe we have Debbie and Allison here to receive the award. Awesome. And then next we have the Fountain Hills Dark Sky Association receiving an award of $1,000, and I believe we have Peggy and Cindy, as well as some other representatives from Dark Sky Association here. Congratulations. All right, and last but not least, we have the Matthew community at Church of the Ascension receiving an award of $1,000, and I believe we have Father Jilson Penkall and MJ Halloran and some other representatives here to receive the award. Congratulations.
Bear with us.
Perfect.
We'll take a group and then we'll give one big round of applause.
Awesome. And while they're taking that picture, I just want to say thank you again to the mayor and council, and especially Republic Services for their contributions year over year to this program. All right. Congratulations to all the award winners. Thank you.
Comment? I don't know that any of us, except maybe the mayor, were on the council a number of years ago when probably one of the most contentious issues in the history of this town came up, which was whether or not to go from a two-hauler system to a single hauler. And apparently, and I wasn't here, but there was almost blood in the streets. There were so many people opposed to going to a single hauler. But I want to say that Republic Services has done a wonderful job, and I've yet to hear a single complaint from any of the citizens about the job they do.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd like to thank all of you groups and the ones who applied and didn't make it, and Republic Services for serving us for so long, and everybody making our community a better place. So we really appreciate it very much. Thank you. Next, we have our call to the public. Liz?
First speaker is Kelly Smith.
Madam Mayor, council members, town employees. My name is Kelly Smith. I've lived in Fountain Hills for 23 years. I'm a full-time resident, full-time businessman, and to top it off, I'm also a candidate for mayor of Fountain Hills. I attended the planning and zoning meeting last night, which to my surprise, there was over, I would guesstimate around 200 plus people there. And there was a lot of concerned, scared, angry citizens there. I looked around the room. I saw quite a few people I knew, and I saw Councilman Friedel there. I happened to see Jan Dubauskis, who's running for LD 23, which is this district's state representative position, and also I saw John Kavanaugh, also Representative Kavanaugh was there and did speak for a moment. What surprised me is when I looked around the room, and much to my disappointment, in such a heated subject where 200 some people were there, I didn't see the rest of you there. And I'm very disappointed with that, and I'm guessing the people will be disappointed with that too. But skipping that, moving on, as of right now, this town has 13 group homes in Fountain Hills, 9 of which are senior assisted living and 4 are the drug-related type housing that we have right now. Citizens are finding drug paraphernalia in close proximity to these homes, which is very concerning to me because I have a narcotics background in law enforcement. One of which is foil used to heat up heroin. Heroin is often laced with fentanyl, and 1 grain, the size of a grain of sand, is enough to kill even a portly fellow like myself. What happens if a child's riding a bicycle in a neighborhood, finds one of those shiny pieces of foil sitting alongside the road, picks it up? I'll let you think about that one. If we can't stop these homes, at least let's protect the public. Let's require some things that are maybe just common sense. I don't know if they're doing them yet or not, but perimeter cameras. The technology's there. You can see into the dark with these cameras now. Let's make sure that there's no comings and goings in these homes. Also, a night watchman. Let's require a night watchman. Simple. Somebody that's awake, kind of monitoring the situation there. And liability insurance. Most of these homes, I'm guessing, they probably don't have that liability policy or some kind of an umbrella policy. They're probably strictly on a residential homeowner's insurance policy, which if the insurance company found out, they would probably cancel that policy immediately. My hat's off to the Planning and Zoning Department. Planning and Zoning Commission, they fielded a ton of questions last night, and they are going to be presenting you with some possible solutions to these problems. Hopefully, that'll be very soon.
Could you finish up where the button
did I go
didn't
over
make the
time?
noise,
Oh, okay.
but yeah,
Well, I'm sorry.
thanks.
My advice is don't kick this can down the road. Let's focus on it now. And then leaving shortly, I'm going to do a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Universal idleness would speedily result in universal ruin. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's not. Kathy Marks?
Thank you. Mayor, Town Council,
First, I want to publicly acknowledge the hard work of the Planning and Zoning Commission last night. We felt heard, validated, and that progress is being made. It is our hope that the Town Council, when presented with the final ordinance recommendations, will have the courage needed to protect the residents of Fountain Hills. When I moved here last April, the previous owners left a bottle of scorpion killer spray under the sink. I was taken aback, but relieved that the bottle was mostly full. Maybe it wasn't needed. That was my biggest fear. Fast forward 10 months, and there's the issue of sober living homes, or as I refer to them, practicing to be sober living homes. They are literally learning how to live a sober life. They are vulnerable to mistakes, and with the freedom to come and go, we believe drug dealers are here, as drug dealers prey on their vulnerability. I recently learned of 2 observed drug deals that occurred in broad daylight, one right in front of my house. What will be the responsibility of the Town Council when one of the citizens sees a drug deal and becomes a target of retaliation? Drug dealers are most likely armed with no regard for the sanctity of life. What if the deal goes bad and a child gets caught in the crossfire? I've brought some exhibits that I'm requesting to be put in the record, items that we, your citizens, have found in the yards and streets of Fountain Hills that prove that drugs are being used in our streets. I am holding up whippets. These are metal canisters that contain nitrous oxide, laughing gas, typically used as accelerants for canisters under pressure. Drug users huff these accelerants for quick high. These canisters are found everywhere. There's rubber tubing. Rubber tubing I found in the front yard of a neighbor. It's burned on both ends, typically used for heroin injection or tying off a vein or ingesting drugs. I also have what we found is tinfoil. Tinfoil with burn marks, very clear that this has been used to cook meth or heroin right before it's being injected.
Sorry,
more.
I picked these up tonight on the way here.
Thank you, Lori. So we have more heroin or meth, right? Now these are dated and timed. We know exactly where they are. As was just mentioned, we know that drug dealers are mixing fentanyl with other drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine. 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds can kill up to 500,000 people. That will wipe out the town of Fountain Hills. What if these items are contaminated with fentanyl? What if we didn't get to these items before my neighbor's 2-year-old daughter picked them up, or my grandsons, or even my dog? We are tired of being told that everyone has more rights than the law-abiding, hard-working, tax-paying citizens of Fountain Hills. We will not stand by, but we will stand up together as a community for the equal rights of all to live peacefully and safely. We hope you will stand with us. Last week, my husband told me that we need to create a home invasion plan. I laughed because, you know, I have a home invasion plan. But here we were discussing what do we do if someone broke into our home and I wasn't near my plan. It made me long for the day when my home invasion plan only consisted of scorpion killer spray, a UV light to get me safely to the bathroom at night, and did not include the word Smith & Wesson. Right now, this is your legacy, Mayor Dickey. This is the legacy of the town council. You and the council still have time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, we're not doing that. No. No applause, please, or we'll ask people to leave. We're not going to do this. Next.
Crystal Kavanaugh.
I too attended the Planning and Zoning last year, and I was impressed with the large number of concerned citizens who showed up in support of the Commissioner's attempts to develop and put forth equitable group home ordinances to this town council. It is hoped that these will be strong enough to be used as tools to oversee and protect the neighborhoods of Fountain Hills from the ever-expanding number of sober living homes. The council will then be tasked with a very important vote to protect the quality of life here in Fountain Hills. And I urge you to vote on these ordinances once they're completed at the earliest date possible, even if a special meeting is required. This is one of the biggest issues for the citizens of Fountain Hills. And every day that passes can impact the future of Fountain Hills and those of us property owners. I firmly believe that this council may finally be understanding the urgency of these issues that have been brought to you for an entire year. Last night, I spoke out spoke out about the state oversight, which is nothing more than an illusion, and yet we must depend on them. We are told that we have no real power locally. In reality, there's one man overseeing all of the sober living homes in the entire state of Arizona. I know his name even, Wesley Sisson. He schedules the yearly visits to monitor their compliance with state regulations. He schedules them, not spontaneous. The homes know when he's coming. So it is logical they would try to be doing their darndest to be in compliance on inspection day. But what about all the other days? Who's monitoring? Citizens can file complaints with the state if a violation is observed, but I'm not sure how long it will take for them to address it. This is an unacceptable level of monitoring with our small community, and the town of Fountain Hills needs to be allowed to have requirements and code enforcement at the local level to help preserve the integrity and the uniqueness of our community. This can hopefully be addressed also by working with some of our state representatives. I, of course, still have concerns over the many lots that have been systematically purchased around Fountain Hills Boulevard and Ivory over the past year by the same person without any clear purpose of his intent. What is the town's knowledge of these lot purchases, and when did you know it? Have you even been made aware of what is planned? Does it have anything to do with more group homes or other related facilities? Mr. Ejim told me directly he spoke with the town, yet I did not see this in the FOIAs I just received today, but perhaps it was over the phone or in person. Please do all you can as a town council to represent the people who live here, own property, and love Fountain Hills as much as I hope you do. Desperate times do call for desperate measures. Do not be afraid to go against the current philosophy of what is and is not possible. You just might end up leading the way for others. Thank you.
Mark Bierman.
Madam Mayor, council members. I also was at the Planning and Zoning last night, and it was absolutely amazing to see the turnout by the residents of this town. Obviously, there is a huge, huge concern, and all we can do is look at what the Planning and Commission did to listen to the residents, and I want to commend them for that. And I guess one of the things that when you're seeing the report now that's going to be coming to you with all the recommendations, I know that the citizens of Fountain Hills here want you to take this seriously, and this isn't a light matter. We're hearing all these different things and possible tragedies that could be happening if we don't be proactive. We need to be proactive before we have to be reactive, and that's, I think, in general, in life in itself, if you're going to get anywhere in life, and there's a lot of people in this town that would probably never be living in Fountain Hills because it's not the cheapest town in the whole wide world to live in. They've been proactive to be here for a reason. And when John Kavanaugh spoke last night and said, you know what, if they tell me it's a 70% chance that we might not win, you know what, let's focus on the 30. There's a 30% chance. Why wouldn't we do that? And go after this and basically protect what we have here in this amazing town of Fountain Hills. We have a gem here, and let's keep it that way. So with my closing thoughts, listen to the residents. Thank you.
Liz Gildersleeve.
Good evening. I watched the February 1st Town Council meeting via YouTube from another country. I can only imagine what it was like to see it in person. So I'd like to speak for a few moments about decorum and the lack of respect and lack of control that happened in this room 2 weeks ago. Mayor Dickey, the lack of control and decorum resides mainly with you. I watched a council member walk in and out of the meeting when the content got too uncomfortable. I watched temper tantrums. I watched a total lack of respect given to residents who took the time to address this council on issues that were important to them. In short, it was a crazy train. Mayor Dickey, your gavel comes down quickly and swiftly when residents have the audacity to applaud a resident's impassioned call to public speech? Where was your gavel and your leadership on the night of February 1st? It was appalling to watch. Thank you.
One other written comment came in from Lawrence Siebert stating, "I am against this whole idea in a small town like ours regarding sober homes. Makes no sense to import a problem we don't have. This is not a city problem, it is a state problem. Asking for a lot of trouble, John Wesley. Don't need regulations, don't need any of this, just asking for our town to have a real problem when it gets out of control. No to the sober living homes, what a terrible name for it."
Thank you. Would you like to say something? Yes, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I normally don't make any comments during call to the public. I'll take a shellacking. I've gotten it plenty of times. I am a little bit offended when Mr. Smith talks about the fact that other council members didn't appear. I dedicate more time to this town, and I've been in this seat in my 4th year, and countless hours, and it's what I signed up for, and it's for my love of the town and the love of the citizens. And I also work a full-time job. But just so you know in the future, so you're not ill-informed, anytime more than 2 council members or the mayor go to any event, that's an open meeting law violation if we do not post it and let everybody know ahead of time that we're going to be there. So just so the public knows, it's not a lack of interest. I hear every single one of you. I think every single one of you know, with over a 25-year career in law enforcement, what side I fall on when it comes to these drug and rehab, whatever the hell you call it. So I dedicate a lot of time. I'm offended by your comments. Know what you're talking about. So if you do get elected mayor, you'll know, so you won't be in violation of an open meeting law.
Just a simple follow-on, if I could. Planning and zoning has lots of meetings and lots of issues. Some people would think some are more important than others. Most of us, as far as I know, don't go to planning and zoning meetings. We also don't go to the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission. We also don't go to some of the other meetings. However, it all comes to us. And we get reports on what happened, and we get recommendations from staff.
Just my own, when it comes to commissions, is that I know that my presence at meetings might change the tenure of the discussion, so I have not ever attended or SPAC or Vision Fountain Hills or any of those things because I want the decisions and the discussions to come about, organically, and right or wrong, when I'm there, it affects things. So I'm very happy with the process that we've had here for years, which is all of the commissions go through what they do, and then we get what comes before us and discuss it at that time. I'd also want to address the idea that this is something that has been ignored. When it first came up a year ago, you can stop me if I need to stop, but when it first came up a year ago at retreat, it was strictly talking about detox centers, which are totally different from group homes. And so it's taken a while to separate those issues and realize that we are actually now talking about 3 different types of entities, and like it or not, some of them have a lot of restrictions on what you can or cannot do. Others were willing to listen to where we can go. But the characterization of neglect and such is just a narrative that isn't so. Last, we talk about me with the gavel. Well, there are rules and that are written down that are for proper decorum, proper what goes on in a meeting. So it says no applause, no hooting or whatever, for good or for bad. It's just not, it's disruptive. And so, yes, and I think I've been very, very, very flexible with a lot of things over the years. So we've had meetings that went till 1 o'clock in the morning, and everybody speaks, and I only gavel usually after the applause doesn't stop. So, and it is not in my purview to stop a council person from getting up and leaving or doing whatever it is they want to do. And there was enough disrespect going around that night. So why don't we just try to move on from that? And unless there's any other comments, I think we're ready to move on with the meeting too.
Ginny?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Just a real quick thing about planning and zoning. One of my first meetings with Grady after I started on as council was I told him that I missed going to planning and zoning meetings, that I found them very interesting, and it was actually one of my favorite meetings to go to in town. Yes, I actually enjoyed it, believe it or not. So he and I had a great conversation at the time about why it wasn't recorded and why it couldn't be recorded, and he promised me that it would come back up again, and obviously we've come full circle and it's going to actually happen now. But yeah, Grady and I had a conscious conversation about why I don't go and why we probably shouldn't go. So hopefully we'll be able to start watching this stuff on YouTube or at least get caught up later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next, we have our consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion, please?
Move approval.
Thank you. Thanks. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. We'll move on to our regular agenda. Our first item is about, it's an item that we are continuing a hearing, so I don't gavel it in. I just gavel it done. And so we're going to hear from John on that and take a vote. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Let me get this up. There we go. Okay, yes, Mayor, council members, as mentioned, this is a continuation of a hearing that we started a month ago having to do with residential design standards. We have noticed, as we talked about last time, I'll just touch on this briefly, some situations over the last several months where we have had building permit applications come in for homes in single-family zoning districts that met the technical requirements of single-family homes, but had a lot of appearance of homes from the exteriors being duplexes or could easily be converted into duplexes, and so it caused some neighborhood concern. And we agreed to look at some opportunities, options where we could amend the code to put a little more strength there so that we can better ensure that homes that get built in our single-family neighborhoods are built to be long-term single residents. So that's what we've been working on. As we did that, we wanted to make sure that we didn't tread into the area of legitimate guest houses or in-law quarters, home within a home kind of situation, because there is a need for that. So as we did that, we went through P&Z. They gave good review of that and recommended an ordinance to you. Just before the ordinance hearing last time, you received some feedback from Dennis Brown, where he hadn't had time to study but had a few concerns about some aspects of it. And so it was continued last time so we could meet with Mr. Brown and see what those concerns and thoughts were. And they had mostly to do with a couple of the first provisions on the separation of the two-car garages, the front doors, and some of the lot configurations that he's worked with in the past and some challenges he saw by always having to follow that particular standard. So what we did based on that discussion is come up with a compromise way to look at it. So here is the ordinance as you looked at it last time. And so it starts off in the section B and talks about the garage design, the front entry design, and the avoidance of a mirror image. And what we did based on that discussion was combine those three into one new item. And so this focuses on the idea we don't want that mirror look, and to the degree that the garages and the front doors help contribute to that, then we would look for an alternative design. But if they really aren't contributing to that impact, or otherwise aren't creating that duplex look, then we wouldn't necessarily require that the two-car garages not face the front street or that the extra door. So it gives us more flexibility to look at the individual case. We think it still gets us to the same spot, but in a little bit different way. In the discussion with Mr. Brown, one of the other things we talked about was regardless of which of the two ordinances now the council may choose to actually approve, that we keep track of it over the next year and plan to come back and report to council in a year. Here's the impact of how we've seen it. Is whichever one we adopted working? Do we need to switch to the other ones or something else that might be better? So that's our report. Again, you have both ordinances attached to your packet, depending on which one you might want to actually go with.
Vice Mayor.
Could you just articulate the major differences between what former Councilman Brown proposed and what staff proposed?
Okay, sure. Mayor, Vice Mayor. So I went back a slide. So this one represents the ordinance previously. And everything after this in the ordinance is all the same. So it's just these first three and how they were treated. So in this one, we have very specific standards proposed for the two-car garages, that if you have more than one two-car garage, they can't both face the front street. One has to be turned some way so it doesn't create that, again, that duplex kind of look. And the other one deals specifically with the front door. If you have more than one door facing the front street, you need to again, put one to the side or somehow kind of hide it so it, again, doesn't give that duplex look from the street. And the third one, again, dealt with the mirror images. So we've taken those same concepts that are in 1 and 2 in this version of the ordinance and just combined them into that third one about the mirror image. And so the end of that says, so especially the placement and orientation of multiple two-car garages and entry points. So those would be particular points we'd look at in terms of a mirror image kind of arrangement to say, yes, this is starting to look like a duplex, and no, let's look at an alternative. But it doesn't specifically now prohibit the idea that you could have two-car garages facing the street or two doors if it really didn't seem to be an issue. Okay.
Do we have any speaker cards?
We do, one from Ron Thompson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members and town staff. First, I'd like to thank you all for being so responsive to my original request on this topic a couple months ago, 3 months ago, as a matter of fact. Appreciate that very much. And for introducing us to John Wesley and Grady Miller to take this action up, which they did, and they spent a lot of time with us. And when I say us, I mean 27 families that signed a petition on one rainy July weekend with their concern over a structure that looked very, very much like a duplex being built in our single-family neighborhood that didn't violate the current ordinances. So just a few quick comments on, I think we've made great progress in both versions here. But I'd like to further bring forward my neighbor's concern about the revision that was suggested, where all we've done is to make sure that the front side appearance, the street side appearance, is not left and right half mirror images. Originally, this whole thing came up because a very innovative builder was able to design such a structure without violating ordinances. There was no firewall right down the middle. But it will take very little to actually accomplish that after construction is built. So I would just like to, in a sense, honor the innovativeness of modern builders and architects, that if they're not constrained by the original modification provisions that mandate, like John just said, if there's two-car garage bays, they've got to be on different faces of the structure, as well as no two front doors facing the street. One has to be on a different face than another. That constrains the design of the structure that, regardless of mirror image or not, then we wouldn't have the appearance of multiple dwellings under one roof. That, we feel, is what dilutes the original spirit and purpose of single-family neighborhoods. And it's why so many of us have come to Fountain Hills and bought what we hope is our last home here in Fountain Hills. So, but again, I'm only suggesting that builders are very innovative people, and where they feel they can fill a need and sell a structure, they'll do that. And yes, we have multi-generational homes here in Fountain Hills, but there's a very thin line between that and actual multi-unit home. And even as we've put in more specific provisions in these ordinances, it's going to be very difficult enough with the original changes we made that mandate this two different faces arrangement to keep people from having multiple dwelling units in under one roof. The final clause that we're uncomfortable about in the revisions is that it states that some of the provisions we have for what defines a living area, a separate living area within a home, one of those that's sort of violated and diluted by this last clause in here that was added in the change that designs when one of the living areas is less than 30% of the size of the livable area of the dwelling unit overall, the limitations don't apply. Yeah.
I'm going to ask John to come up and maybe address some of the stuff you said.
Okay.
And then,
All right.
but since you brought it up, if there's something else that we want to ask you, we'll ask you to come
Okay.
back up.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. John, is there a way that you think that the way the revision is, that that you could address preventing some of the things that the gentleman was talking about?
Yes, Mayor, just a second, I want to get...
Okay, yeah. I see you struggling there.
Excuse me there. Am I getting the right one? There's the host. There it is. So, Mayor and Council, with regard to the first objection, we wrote it the way that we did, with a very specific language about the garages and the front doors, because we understand that concern, and that was the most clear and direct way to handle the issue, is to have a very specific provision. And so it's a balancing act. Luckily, we really don't see very many of these, and hopefully we won't see them in the future, but as we talked about before, the industry's changing out there with the different type of living environments that people have and want to have, and how they might try to, again, be creative to sidestep ordinances. And so, that's where we did start with the more restrictive one. In talking with Mr. Brown, I did see, and we were able to point out, well, here's, some situations where, based on the lot configuration, the slopes and things that you're dealing with, it can create a challenge to always have that very strict requirement that you have to have them not face the front street. And so, again, it can be a very legitimate approach still, without the intent to create or look like a duplex. And so we feel like the revised language does give us that flexibility while still expressing the intent between, again, that lead-in statement and the rest of the provisions in the code. If something really is starting to look like a duplex, I think we can use that language to get the adjustment.
And I want council to ask questions, but just let me ask this. If somebody did try to alter a house in that way, and if they would need to get a permit, right, for that kind of construction, any kind of change, so they would have to not be following our law anyway to get to that next step.
Yes,
Is that true?
correct, Mayor. To legally alter the home, yes, they should be getting a permit, and to actually change it legally to a duplex, they would need to change it to a duplex zone. It couldn't happen actually in a single-family zone. So there's several steps there, but I think the concerns from the neighbors are not just the actual, but the appearance. Someone driving down the street looks at this home and, well, that sure looks like a duplex here in this single-family neighborhood. I don't think I want to be here because they've got duplexes mixed in single-family homes. So it's not just what can actually happen, but it's that appearance issue also that I think is of concern and protection for the neighborhood.
Did we have any other cards I forgot to ask? Okay, council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, John, taking Mr. Thompson's concerns into play in this, you don't see the revisions being a problem because the ultimate say-so is with you or with the town?
Mayor, Councilmember, that's correct. Staff understands, the rules and what we're after today, particularly. At 5 years from now, will there be as clear understanding? I would hope so. I think so. I think the overall context of the ordinance is there, but there is that flexibility that comes with the revised ordinance can cut both ways. somebody can use it as a loophole to argue, why they should do something that maybe we don't like, and we don't have quite as strong a teeth to say no, as opposed to the ordinance as was originally proposed. But again, the downside with that one is, now there'll be situations where, it really is a hardship to, move those garages around, and, we create an issue that way.
I guess with the lots that are remaining in Fountain Hills and everything, we had addressed this maybe a year and a half ago about lots that had steep, you know what
Correct.
I'm talking about.
Yes.
So, I mean, the lots that are remaining, we have to give some flexibility to the builders so that people buy these lots and build these homes on them. Would you agree with that? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Mayor, Councilmember, yes, certainly we did make that modification a year or so ago to some of the steep slope, odd-shaped lots to give a little bit more flexibility in how we do the lot disturbance, because it can be a challenge. I don't know if the two situations would really align that well, because those steep lots are usually pretty big and they're going to have unique designs to them anyway. We're talking, I think, more likely of smaller lots where the situation is going to occur. But again, both are a generalization. It could happen. And thinking about that approach that we took there, again, if the council would want me to go back and take another look, there may be some language I could look at from that might play in here to describe some of that flexibility that's allowed a little better as another way to look at this, if you're kind of uncomfortable about picking between these two options.
Okay. I just know former Councilmember Brown worked so hard with the casitas, and I was actually the one that asked this to be tabled and speak with him because he was ill at the time. I just received an email just prior to coming on the dais. It says, "I apologize for not getting this email off 3 weeks ago. John was very prompt in contacting me with concerns over the multi-generational housing concerns affecting the way Fountain Hills looks at casitas. John has combined some of the language and it made it much more palatable change for the difference between casita use and multi-generational designs. I thank all three of you, Councilmember Spellich, Mayor Dickey, and Director Wesley, for allowing me to work with staff on this issue. Thank you, Dennis Brown, President of Echelon Builders Company." So I don't know I don't want to speak for the other council members. I mean, I'd like to make everybody happy. I know it's like my wife. I can't ever make her totally happy, but I do the best I can. But I would like to see us make really a sound decision that would make residents happy, as well as builders happy. But if you don't think that language could be tweaked to satisfy, I don't know. What you do this every day. What? I hate to put it back on you again, because we've been kicking this can down the road for a while.
Right.
But,
I'll try to save you a little bit. So
thanks.
again, you never found you never found model anything in another city to help us. So maybe it's a kind of a unique thing that happened. You had, I think, did you say the MPOA, or it did not happen in that neighborhood? Maybe it's a rarity, and with a combination of the revision and the ability to look at it not only as it's happening, but as we said, reevaluate it to see if it becomes some kind of an issue, because we can always change it. That, and I'd like to hear it from everybody else, but I mean, I think I'm comfortable going with the revision with all of the cautions that are included with it. But I'd welcome others if you want to speak. Nobody wants to speak.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd be interested to see what happens a year from now and what cases we have. Walk us through this. So if this gets proposed and accepted tonight, your department monitors this, correct?
Yes.
And I'm not familiar with the process, but how many inspections do you take a look at? And when a house is going up, you see the original plans, and then do we go out and make sure they're following the plans, and how often is that done?
So, Mayor, Councilmember, so initially, again, as the applications get submitted, the plans are reviewed. The primary person that would review this aspect would be the planner, who reviews the building permit plans, as well as then the building official would have an eye on these particular issues, but it'll mostly be the planner. So they will review it for conformance with this section of the code, and plans would get approved that are in compliance. If we see a compliance issue, we'd request those modifications. And then once we get to the construction phase, it depends upon the property, but there are, I'm going to use a very specific legal term of a lot of inspections that occur that start with from the very beginning with retaining walls and foundations all the way through the plumbing, electrical, framing. You know, we're there a lot looking at different aspects, and so they have the opportunity to catch any changes. But the types of things that we're talking about here, whether we have two garages facing the street or not, or how that looked, that's something to really catch at the building permit issuance stage. Once they're building, they're not going to be little tweaks that they could kind of sneak by and move a garage or install a front door that wasn't there or whatever. That would be way obvious and be easily caught in an inspection.
Thanks for looping Dennis in, because I really value his input, and I'm kind of leaning towards the revision because Dennis was involved, and that's really the only reason why, because that's how much I value his input in this.
Any
Madam
other?
Mayor?
Yeah, oh, yes, sir. Sorry. Always forget you, I'm sorry.
No, thanks. And no, I agree with your comments, Madam Mayor. I think Mr. Brown's revisions, I think, are acceptable at this point and give us enough latitude and leeway to address the concerns addressed by Mr. Thompson and some of his neighbors. And I think, most of this stuff is not going to apply to future, lots. Or the number of infill lots is decreasing year by year. So I don't think we're going to run into this too much in the future. And as a couple of you have stated, we can always amend this change if we find it's not working.
Okay, thank you. If we're done with comments, I'll close the hearing and then I'll take a motion. Hearing is closed and the motion is on page 66, one or the other.
Motion to approve ordinance 21-17. I guess I say the revised edition. Does that cover it? Okay.
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll keep our eye on it, sir. Thanks. Our next item is about community center and special event fee waiver policies. Director Rachel Goodwin. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, I'm back tonight. This is our, I don't even know what number we're on tonight, but we're about a year and a half into this process, so I'm hopeful that we can make some final strides here through tonight. Just as a reminder of where we're at with everything. This was brought by Councilmember Spelch, again, about a year and a half ago, to review what our fee waiver policy is, how much we waive, when we waive, how we waive, why, and start formalizing this procedure. It has been a difficult process. It's very sticky because all of our groups, all of our community members are users, and we value what they bring to us, and then we value what they do for our community. We just talked about our Concourse in the Hills and all of our different programs and events, so they all bring a lot of value to us. So we want to be cognizant of that. We are just trying to develop a consistent and equitable use policy for both the community center and our special events. So, as we move forward into tonight's discussion, what I am requesting of our council tonight is our final direction on the policy. I know we're going to probably talk more about some of our user agreements and some of our groups that we work with regularly, including our Chamber of Commerce and our FHCCA, but the policy itself is what we're trying to kind of finalize so that we can move forward with all of our other groups that are not part of that discussion. We have a number of groups out there that are still waiting to make reservations and set up their meeting schedule for their use at the community center and other things. And having that policy finalized will really help move forward a lot of other things. So with that, we'll get rolling. So last time I was here, this was our review of the community center recommendations. Not a lot has changed here other than the feedback that was received that we would not limit it to simply 501c3s, but we would make it available to all nonprofits. And that includes our veterans groups and some of our other C-level nonprofits. So what the proposal is that all Fountain Hills-based nonprofit groups would be eligible for a 50% fee reduction from the established rates at our community center. That would include standard AV as well. We would have some limitations about when they could do that. We're recommending reservations after 2 o'clock on weekdays, which before that, we have a significant usage for our senior programs and some of our other activities. Same thing on the weekends, we would limit some of the weekend usage. It would need to have 6 months in advance. And it, of course, would be subject to availability. None of this is different from the last time we talked other than the more open nonprofit status. Any questions or concerns on that part? Anybody? Mike? Okay, no problem. We're getting there. Last time we took a look at the fees. So, of course, the first question is, well, great, we're going to give them half off. Half off of what? This is what it looks like. Right now, the adopted rates are, as you see them on the left column. The right column represents what the nonprofits would pay should this policy be adopted. Again, we would work with them with the AV needs. If there's other large items, including staging or dance floors or things like that, that would be subject to the fees that are associated with those, because there's a lot of time and staff involved in that. Deposits, permits, all of the other process would need to apply, as well as deadlines, and adhere to our standard hours. Any thoughts or questions on this one? Okay. I did mention that we had some discussions about exemptions to the policy. And we did talk about the exemptions being under exceptional circumstances. And that is really to try to limit that, because, again, that becomes a slippery slope. The idea here is that exceptions would be limited to altruistic or essential mission or enhance the programs that are offered at the community center.
Once again, please, slowly.
Exceptional circumstances, programs that serve an altruistic or essential mission or enhance the programs offered within the community center.
And who's going to make that decision? You, I assume. Lucky you.
Well, we have a few identified, and we'll talk about those. Again, we just want to limit these exceptions to preserve this, impartiality and the clarity and the consistency. The more outside process we have, or the more consistent we are with our policy, the easier it is for everybody. There's so much institutional knowledge that isn't written down anywhere. This will really help that process.
Mayor, I don't know that this can be solved, but when things are not buttoned down really tight, like this one, it becomes sticky, and it could become acrimonious. Well, we're whatever, we should get that break because I don't know how to button it down. And I don't think you want to be the one to be judge and juror. It's just a comment. I don't know how we're going to deal with it.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And this is sort of this first attempt to button it down. So if we can get there 80% of the way with this policy, that's darn better than we are now.
The 20%, they'll be calling us.
Exactly.
Right.
You're right. Right now, we don't have any, so that this is, again, it may be a small step in the right direction, but it's a step nonetheless. So I agree with what you're saying. Some of the suggested programs that we are looking at as what we would call exceptions would be our quarterly blood drive. We work with the Kiwanis Club to do the quarterly blood drive. I think everyone kind of feels like that is an altruistic sort of higher purpose. There's no financial gain there. There's no anything other than trying to, people helping people, so to speak. So that would be one that would qualify. Another program that we have a lot of participation in is our bingo. Bingo happens every Tuesday, almost every Tuesday throughout the year, 40-some weeks a year. And it serves a really vulnerable population. A lot of our players in there are 80 plus. I think they just celebrated one lovely lady's 100th birthday. So again, it's a program that serves a vulnerable population that otherwise wouldn't be there. So we have identified a few, but we would like to keep them severely limited. I don't think it's free. I think there's a pot, actually.
I'm going to need it when I'm not getting that $400 a month.
So just to go along with what Ms. Goodwin said, we really don't think there's going to be too many more out there. I know in past years, it's been probably at least 4 or 5 years, but we've had the volunteers that have helped, for instance, with the people do their taxes. You know, that's an altruistic thing. We think it would be complimentary. As an example, that would be one that we would likely not charge because it's already a volunteer organization. There are volunteers doing this. Again, we're really buttoning this down and really tightening it up. So we struggled just to come up with the 2 off the top of our heads, and these were very obvious ones. Bingo obviously is very complementary to the different programs and services that we do in the building already. So looking forward to the vice mayor participating in the future in bingo.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I got the meaning of being old, you know. Only old people do bingo.
So, last time I was here, there was a number of questions about the financials of the community center. You know, if we do this, what does it look like? You know, how does it look now? What could we change? So the next few slides are pretty data intensive, and this is just to answer some of the questions that came up. I will state right now that this policy isn't designed to somehow be a huge revenue generator for the town. If you noted a few slides back, it was $12.50 an hour for a room usage. This is not some effort in order to, you know, make up for budgetary things or whatnot. So how much does it cost to operate the community center? I believe that was one of our questions we had from our council last time. This is by the numbers for the building. So the operations and the staff to run the facility, set up, break down, open the doors, unlock things, turn on the lights, as well as all of our standard utility rates annually. So we're looking at a little over $345,000 a year just to operate the facility and the staff required to do that. So that's not a small number. Again, the policy is not made to somehow offset this number. We are not an enterprise fund. We're getting there.
Okay.
Okay. I have an idea where you're going. If I'm wrong, I'd be happy to answer. But the community center is not just a building. It's a lot more than that. We have a number of programs that are also housed at that building. So our seniors, all of our senior programming goes there. So our support services, our health, our movies, our game days, you know, our poker and our mahjong and whatever else we play over there. And then the staff that goes to get that supports those and provides those is another $121,000. Home delivered meals is based there. And while it is very heavily run through our volunteers, it is on the backs of our volunteers that program operates 365 days a year. It does still take some staff and support and supplies and things like that. Lastly, our volunteer program is housed there as well. And that is Kim Wickland. I know a number of you know Kim and all of her great work with our Make a Difference Day and our Give a Lift and all of our holiday things. She's also housed over there too. So when you put it all together, this is what you're looking at. I added the revenue that each program brings in, as well as the expenditures and the related cost recovery. I'll take that as a win. So, as you can see, it's not something we are trying to create this cost recovery model with. At a 19% cost recovery overall, it's not adding this policy in and adding these fees in is not going to be a major windfall. It's just not designed to be that.
Hey, Rachel, let me just ask, so, but if this doesn't count, so the full expenditure, but then we have weddings and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't the whole story here. This is kind of apples to apples kind of thing, but the expenditure part is including, is all inclusive.
Well, the weddings and things like that, the revenue that we generate off of that is part of that $56,000 number. So anything that we generate from the community center through rentals, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a baby shower, whether it's a Christmas party, whether it's a community group that pays for a rental usage over there, like our HOA groups meet there, all of that is totaled in that 56,000 number.
Rachel, do you expect that 56,000 with the improvements we've done in that community center to go up with more additional rentals for weddings and banquets and that kind of stuff?
Yes, so that would be the hope. So there's a multi-pronged sort of approach we're taking this. So you nailed the idea that we have upgraded the facility. So there is there's a desire to use the facility, and it attracts more usership because of it, of the great shape that it's in. Additionally, as we bring this policy on board and we start creating more weekend usability for paid rentals, we'll be able to up that number, because right now, a lot of our weekends are community use, which is fantastic. But we've been waiving the value of those so that, when we have a weekend usage for, I'm going to say our community band, because they've been a great partner of ours and have really worked with us to try to see how they can use the space. But if we have a band concert on a Saturday, I can't accommodate a wedding. And part of that is, many of you know, is weddings or small conferences or things like that plan a year, 18 months out. So finding dates where we can work and accommodate to balance the community use versus our rental use is a fine line. And we want to be cognizant of how we do that, because it is a community center. It is for our community. So we want to make sure that they have full access, but at the same time, we have a way to hopefully offset our expenditures, if that makes sense.
Would we advance that further if we ever got that kitchen fully operational in there? Would there be more opportunity for us down the road?
I think it would be an attractive amenity, yes. I think there are some expenses and some other probably unintended things we'd have to consider there too. I know catering has been a challenge, but then there's storage, which we don't have there. A number of folks want access a couple of, if not day or more in advance to set up for large catered things. That can sometimes create a little bit of a struggle too. So we would have to kind of explore that, but there's an option there, yeah, absolutely. The last slide with data I have coming up is some examples of our user groups and the fee impacts, so that you can kind of see what this would look like. I just drew a handful of them just to kind of give some variety. I mentioned our band, but we also have a community chorus that practices there 23 weeks a year for 3 hours at a time. We are working with them to adjust. They do use 2 rooms. Currently, the rate would be $3,450 for the year. At this policy, if the policy was adopted, it would come down to the $1,725. Bingo, I gave that as an example, 48 weeks annually for 8 hours, 2 ballrooms. That's just an exorbitant fee that they would not be able to absorb. And as you've noted, those asterisks kind of indicate that they would be considered a partner program, and we would suggest that their fees be waived under this policy. We just kind of said nonprofit board meetings. We have a lot of groups that meet there, hold their monthly meetings. In general, they hold about 10 a year for 2 hours at a time. So each of those board meetings is about $500 for the year. It would be reduced to $250. The blood drive I mentioned, they hold 4 of them annually. They run 8 hours for 2 days using 2 rooms. You can see there at $3,200, it would be brought to $1,600, but again, they would probably qualify as a potential partner program.
Rachel? Yeah. I assume this is correct. So let's take a board meeting that meets monthly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's $250 a month, right?
No, that would be annual.
Oh, that's annual?
Yes.
Oh, I was going to.
Yep, this is an annual look.
Business.
Yes, no, this would be an annual look. Again, it's $12.50 an hour for 2 hours at a time, so that's $25 per meeting, essentially, times 10 meetings. Mm-hmm. So again, when you start putting the numbers to it, it's not it's not a big windfall by any means, but it is, to use a phrase that we've been using a lot. It is skin in the game, and it does help keep groups accountable, and it helps us prioritize use of the space. All right, that is everything regarding the community center. We have had conversations with our FHCCA, which is one of our partner organizations that has a lot of, it's the umbrella group for a lot of groups, including the Community Chorus and Bingo that I have listed here. They have a number of other groups under them that use the community center significantly. I've been working with their president, Tammy Bell, to discuss what we could do to help bring them more in line with this policy. We are not there yet. We don't have a solid proposal. But we can look at them if the council believes that that is sort of a group we want to set up a user agreement with. Outside of that, any thoughts or questions or concerns regarding the policy as presented?
Yes, Councilman?
So, Rachel, thank you, Madam Mayor, sorry. So we could approve it as it stands today, or this evening, the way it's written, with exempting for future discussion the Chamber of Commerce and the FHCCA.
Correct.
And it's imperative that we kind of do this because you have many things pending.
I do. Ideally, the final direction tonight from council, if we don't want to talk about the user agreements, the final policy direction is, yes, we like this concept, the 50% seems reasonable, it seems like something the council would support, then I'll take that. If there's no other questions or amendments to it, I will go back and draft the final policy and bring that back for your formal adoption. And then it would be, once adopted, it would probably be implemented to the public as of July 1. That would be our goal.
I also want to clarify too, Councilmember Spellich too, about the operating agreement. So what we will also do is basically provide the terms and conditions for the council to discuss and debate and figure out what they would like to see in the operating agreement. But the operating agreements would be administrative in nature. But we would get your buy-in as to what you want to see in that, and then we would do it administratively. Does that sound reasonable?
Just one little thing. Proof of nonprofit status required of all groups seeking fee reductions, but then it says proof of 501c3 status will be required. Isn't that contradictory?
It is. That the 50C, it would be the nonprofit status, not specific to a 501c3. So again, if it's a vet group that's a C9 or whatever it might be, or a C7, that would be absolutely fine, as long as it's a nonprofit based here in Fountain Hills.
We're going to get ready to vote soon, right?
I think we have to talk about the fee, the events first.
Yep, I have just a smidge more. Because this was really specific to the community center, because unbeknownst to me, when we kind of dove into this, the community center became much more difficult to navigate than I expected. But with all of that said, if there's no questions about the community center, we'll transition to the special events, which kind of is similar and different at the same time. Very similar in that we're recommending the same concept, that special event groups would be, or nonprofit groups would be eligible for 50% fee reduction from established rates for special events as well. So if someone's looking to hold an event on the avenue or in a park, the same process would apply. They would still go through our permit process, they would still work with our special event team. Fees would be reduced by 50%. With the exception of any non-town fees. So if they need sheriff's officers or if they need road closures, all of those fees would be subject to full payment because those are not town assessed. So they would still be liable for any of those types of fees. They would still need to go through the permit process if they needed alcohol or anything like that. They would still have to go through the proper chains. The damage deposits and other things like that would not be eligible for the fee waivers. So it's pretty similar to the community center in essence. So what does that look like in fees? We currently divide our event fees into small, medium, and large, and it's sort of based on the attendance or the anticipated attendance, as well as the impact to the staff, as well as the setup and breakdown and things like that. For reference, the concourse would be a large event, an extra, extra, extra large if I had that category. That's a big one. But we have events of all different scales. We have our kite festival. That's usually kind of a smaller event. We have, obviously the fair is quite big. The fairs are quite big. We have, so we have variable rates. So that's kind of what you're seeing here, and what they would break down to for the nonprofit rates. Questions?
Rachel?
Yes, ma'am.
This is probably something you already said, but is this have anything to do with being residents or non-residential nonprofits, or just across the board?
The idea here would be as long as they are based here in Fountain Hills. So again, I'm going to say, let's say, I don't know, Goodwill of Arizona decided to come and say, we want to hold an event in Fountain Hills. Well, just because you have a location here doesn't mean that you are based here, if that makes sense. So Goodwill would still have would still be considered a nonprofit, and they would be eligible for any nonprofit rates, but they would not be eligible for that 50% fee reduction.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these the current fees, or are they going to be increased? Because these look really, really low, considering what is used and the volume of people that attend them.
These are the current adopted fees. Yes, ma'am.
Going to show us the new ones?
They aren't any new, at this point, there's not any proposed changes to them. So if that is something we want to adjust a fee, then we're going to bring in our finance director.
What I like to just kind of describe, though, these are the gross fees, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also add-ons. So there's the deputy cost when they have a need for deputies. Also, when there's going to be a street closure, they have to pay for the company that does the closure of the street. So all those fees, and if there's any staff effort or anything, all that adds up on top of it. But these are the base fees for the events.
Okay, so do you have a spreadsheet that could show us the base fees plus anticipated increase in costs due to what Grady said, or because I feel like I'm not looking at the full picture and being able to make an educated decision on this?
Sure. So each event is obviously very unique to itself, of course. One example is, I'm going to use Concourse just because everybody's really familiar with it. So Concourse we consider it a 2-day event because they start setting up on Friday and then the event is on Saturday. So they're charged $3,500 each day for the park. And then we sit down with the organizer and say, okay, these are the streets that you're going to need to close based on public safety concerns. So we kind of add up, okay, you're going to need 7 deputies for the street closures. And then MCSO issues them an invoice for the deputies at, I don't know, $60 an hour, or whatever it is that they pay. And that goes to MCSO. We don't handle that. And so then they start, okay, well then they have to bring in porta-johns and they need to bring in lights or whatever else they need to bring in, and all of the different amenities to actually put on the event. If it's a group that's coming to us to host it here in Fountain Hills, we're not doing the event, but we are the host site, so to speak. We work with them on all of those recommendations, but it's on them and incumbent on them to go out and get the contracts and the deliveries and set up all of those types of things. So essentially what you're seeing here is the fee that the town receives. So if a nonprofit, I'm going to say, we had plenty of them up here earlier today. So if the Boys and Girls Club says, Rachel, we want to hold an event on the avenue, they would be eligible for the 50% reduction here. So instead of paying the $2,500, they would pay the $1,250, but they would still have to go pay for the road closures or the restrooms or whatever other logistic support they would need to go do. Does that make sense?
I understand, but
okay.
Given the large turnout we just had this weekend for the car show, was their fee $3,500 a day?
Yes.
That's all?
Yes.
They used the whole lake, the whole lawn, the whole 9 yards?
Correct. Correct.
Does that cover the town costs to even repair the grass?
This is not based on cost recovery
I know
at all.
that, but to me, it just seems like a ridiculously low amount of money to rent out such a huge facility and iconic fountain and lake, considering how much money that the nonprofit, if you want to call it, is making.
Sure.
In consideration to what it costs the town for the employee time, just fixing it up, repairing the lawn, the yard afterward. I mean, this just in relationship to the size of people that attended, the damage, whatever you want to say. I think this is an unrealistically low figure.
I just wanted to clarify too. So Rachel, my understanding is the $3,500 per day is what anybody would pay if they came off the street. They're not necessarily the nonprofit.
Correct.
Correct. No, but I was just going to take that a step further. So we just went through a fee analysis, and you made a statement that these aren't full cost recovery, but we went through a user fee analysis, and these fees were recommended based on their analysis of the cost of using the space and impacts and such, correct?
There's also market demand. What can you rent, let's say Tempe Beach Park as an event venue? There is a market rate for things to where we need to be within that as well. So there's also that kind of caveat built in there. What I would say is that part of this beauty of this policy, it is that it's not specific. It's not tied to a specific number. It's tied to whatever the council adopted fees are. So if the council decides to say, hey, we want to adjust these fees, and they get adjusted to another number, the policy would still apply so that we don't have to come back and keep changing what the policy says. It's tied to whatever the fee is that the council has adopted, which we do fee adjustments annually as part of our budget process. So if this is a fee that we want to reevaluate, we can certainly do that. Thankfully, it's not subject to what the policy is tonight, though, if that makes sense.
Vice Mayor?
Unless I'm misunderstanding, I don't think concourse is the best example because we have events that are small, medium, large, and then extra, extra large. And so if we're charging $3,500 for a day for a much, much smaller venue, then we run the risk of scaring people away and not having events. And these events are for the public. It's for the town, the public. It's not cost recovery. But I think we have an obligation to the citizens to provide as many of these events as we can at a cost that's not outrageous. And that's why it's not cost recovery.
I think that's very valid. Absolutely. Thank you. And maybe a good example is, I know we've worked with the Rotary on a car show, on wanting to do a car show on the Avenue, and they've done one a number of years ago. I know there's interest in bringing it back again. So if we were to move forward on that, our local Rotary would be the host. We would identify if it's a small, medium, or large, probably a medium or large, most likely. They would be eligible for that nonprofit reduction to help them put on their event at a reasonable cost. And so I think that's a better example. Does that work? Again, conceptually, it's still 50% off the rates, much like the community center is. One of the biggest users and one of our biggest partners in terms of special events is the Chamber of Commerce. And I know that's been a big topic. And again, we're going to talk about the Chamber of Commerce, but that doesn't, if we're not where we're ready to go with that, we can still move forward with the policy. But thankfully, Betsy and I have had a number of conversations, and I want to thank her for her input. She is here to comment if you have any questions of her tonight. But through our conversations, these are the events that we've identified that are part of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce that contribute to our community. So annually, they have our 2 arts and crafts. They do our Thanksgiving Day Parade. They've taken on Oktoberfest, Stroll in the Glow, and the State of the Town. As needed, they also do our mayoral debates, our council candidate forums, and they've added the Fountain Hills Days, which is coming up the end of next month. So just to give you an idea, we would develop a user agreement that would help identify what the town partnership would be here, how we would work collaboratively for marketing and other things like that. Betsy was kind enough to share some impacts, some economic impacts, because we have identified that the chamber does have some financial contributions outside of just the direct payments for the special events. Based on their numbers, they approximately contribute $30,000 annually in business license fees to the town, another $100,000 in civic group fundraising, complimentary booth space, and a number of forums, like I said, for our mayor and council debates. They support our tourism promotions. And based on a study done in the late 1990s, there's an estimated $2 million of economic impact brought in by the chamber. So with that said, there's a number of questions of, well, how much does it really cost to put on an event? It's not cheap. We know that as we put on our own events as a town, we know that there's an investment there, a significant investment. So again, Betsy was willing to share what their average costs are for their annual events. So you can kind of get an idea. This is outside and not including the fees that the town would assess if they were to pay for use of the park or the avenue.
Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm tired. I'm not quite following. Fine arts and crafts, fall and spring, $330,000 average for what?
That's the average cost to put the fair on, put one fair on.
Really?
According to the chamber, yes, sir.
That got my attention.
Understandably. Lastly, we have put together some numbers that said if the town were to charge the chamber for their usage of the spaces, this is what the value would be. So this is the value of what we are currently waiving based on the fees that we just looked at, as well as other sort of in-kind support noted on the side there.
Right, so we're not going to come up with this intergovernment, or this agreement tonight, right? I mean, but this just gives us a good feel for the value of the, not only just the events themselves, but the business licenses and such that was on the last slide. So much like what we just talked about with the community center, you'll just move forward and work with Betsy and the board, and then we'll get whatever input. But I think this is, this is very familiar because this is what we kind of brought forward. I don't know, maybe a year ago, and even Sharon Morgan had given me some of these. So I think we're trying to make sure that this is a totally different category, in my opinion. So I'm glad that we're going to move forward with a different kind of agreement. Anybody have anything else to add? Yes, Councilman?
Funny you brought up Sharon Morgan. 3 years ago, when I proposed this, and I got the tongue lashing of the century from former Mayor Sharon Morgan when I brought this up, that it was absolute blasphemy for that to even come out of my mouth, that I would expect the chamber to pay any money. So I haven't changed my position. Sorry, Betsy, I love you and worked with many things, but I do believe that the chamber should pay some fees, and nothing that's presented this evening is going to make me change my mind on that. So since the mayor said we're not going to talk about that, I want to personally thank you and everybody that helped you, Grady and all that. This was a tremendous amount of work, and I'm a firm believer, when I started this 3 years ago, that everyone should have skin in the game, and it should also be fair and equitable. Facilities should not be rented on who has a phone call, the old Chicago way of doing business, who calls somebody, who makes a waiver to do something. I believe everybody should know the rules ahead of time before the game is played, and everybody follow the rules. None of the fees that you said today, the reduced fees, are outrageous. If anybody needs $12.50, call me, I'll give it to you. So I just think it's fair. I think what you put together is a great plan. I know that you will work with Director Lavoie and the FHCCA. As we discussed prior, there's so many things under the umbrella of FHCCA, and there's mission creep, meaning that when is enough enough? You know, we talked about everybody that's a member of the FHCCA gets 4 meetings a year. Anything over 4 meetings a year, you're on the hook to pay the reduced fee. I mean, if anybody thinks that that's outrageous or something, I can't comprehend it. But back to thank you for everything you did, Grady. Everybody who had input into this, I really appreciate it. It wasn't an easy task. I know deep down inside you wanted to kill me for having you go through all this, but I think it's well worth it. And cost recovery is not the issue. We're never going to, if we started, even the fees that we agreed upon and that this council voted on, or I'm sorry, the former council? I don't think. Okay, I think the former council voted on it. Even those fees, we didn't really recover what we actually spend. And we shouldn't. We're a town that should be community friendly and help everybody in the community, but helping doesn't always denote free. So, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So is it going to be one motion for both things? No, I'm for community center and for activities, not for the IGA. I mean, I keep saying that, the agreements.
From what I'm understanding, the proposal as presented is a 50% for nonprofits for both the community center and special events.
Okay, I see it, page 80.
Yeah, and if I may, I believe that Ms. Goodwin said that we would come back with a policy for your adoption, but basically, we're taking your direction tonight, and we'll come back with a finished policy for you to adopt. Maybe put it on consent. We'll, of course, bring the, any of the components that involve operating agreements. Those will
Right.
be up for separate discussion.
Okay, so suggested motion, we don't need a motion. Is that what you're saying?
No, we don't need a motion tonight. We think we have enough direction from you.
Unless there's any final direction, I think
Okay,
I can draft it. All right.
looks good, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Then our last item is our Arizona League Legislative Bulletin. We got fairly late at least to me, a great list from Jack. And it kind of has everything on it that I had put together. Grady, did you have a chance to look through?
I did.
It's really good.
Unfortunately, we got this about 2 o'clock today, so we had meetings and such, so we weren't able to really review it as thoroughly as we would have liked. But
That's
I
not
do,
his fault. He got it to us, but
Right,
that he
it-
got it to us at all, but
Right. He was actually had kind of planning being here tonight, and I thought it was probably not a good night for that. So, in any case, I think the mayor and Mr. Lunsford and I have been kind of tracking some of these bills and have been able to register opposition or support for some of the bills. There's a few of these that are just really very obnoxious, and I hate to say that, but like the preemption of municipal zoning, which just really, we think sober living is just really bad, which it is, but to think that anything can go in neighborhoods without, zoning, the fact that you could probably, that you could have multifamily going into a single family, or having multiple dwelling units put in a single lot. that's
basically
zoned for
makes a
one.
lot of our discussion moot. If that happens, anything that we've been talking about
Yes.
recently just becomes out, just out of our control.
We
I
really-
wanted Mike to know that the 1245, the vaping bill, did pass 5-4 in the committee. So, and that preempts cities and towns from adopting any ordinances that regulate sales and marketing of the products. It's this is not my word, a convoluted preemption of certain zoning regulations for tobacco and retail vapor stores. So I don't know what'll happen to it when it gets to the floor, but unfortunately it did pass.
Mayor, if I may too, I just wanted to remind the council too. So one of the things that's unique about this legislative session is that with the council adopting the legislative policy agenda, there are a number of key policy issues in there that we have been able to, because some of these bills have been moving very quickly, we've been able to actually register opposition to because they, for instance, are affecting state shared revenue or preempting local government's abilities to, such as the zoning. So what I'm trying to let you know is I think based on that, we've been able to actually move forward on a number of the bills that you see before you here. Usually these are moving quicker than we have our meetings to get your feedback. So with the legislative policy agenda, it's given us a tool that we haven't had in the past.
Definitely. And some of the bills that we were in favor of have been going. The fireworks bill, even though Senator Eugenie Rita voted no, did pass out 7-2, and that was a league proposition. So that was one of the good ones. And then the Prop 400 renewal bills were like 10-0. So those are going to be great. But there are a lot, as Grady mentioned, that really one that will really hurt us is not collecting construction sales tax unless they buy it in town. So if you're a town that doesn't have like a Home Depot or or Lowe's or something like us, it would really hurt us. That, and then the police one, the police and fire, and I understand the intention. They don't want people to be removing services from the police, but another thing that Councilman Spellich had started, and we have been looking into our contracts for public safety. And so say the contract comes back and find that we've been able to have some savings without any change in service, we would get penalized for that, for spending less, as if it meant we were doing something else. So I think some of these have what they call the famous unintended consequences that we really got to keep an eye on. So, Vice Mayor?
Well, this may be way off the reservation, but Aaron, I've got a question. If for example, the zoning legislation would have passed, which is absolutely horrible, does the league or anybody ever look into the constitutionality of issues like this, the state constitution?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, the league takes active positions with respect to all those issues, whether with respect to constitutionality, conformity with other separation of powers issues. They certainly raise those both on the legal side and when they present to, when they speak before a committee or before the legislature.
Do we have any experience with actual suits by the league or anybody else if they pass legislation that's really onerous?
Typically, the league will appear, this has been my experience with several of bills that have come up in the past. Usually it won't be the league that's an actual named plaintiff. If someone challenges a bill, it would be an individual plaintiff or an interest group, and then the league will usually present an amicus brief, file it with the court, a document outlining that we're essentially a third-party stakeholder in the position. Here's why, court, you should either overturn or not overturn this particular piece of legislation.
But to do that, somebody with standing has to sue.
Correct.
And then the question is, how do you define standing for some of these things? I mean, for example, I can't give an example, but there might be situations where you could find an individual. Why are you looking like that?
No reasons. Councilwoman McMahon, we could actually talk about standing for an entire semester of law school if you want to.
I want the Cliff Note. Yeah, I want the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah. Essentially, somebody who has a particularized injury would have to bring a cause of action. Someone who is actually injured by the statute.
And you can't cite off the cuff any within the last 5 years situations where injured parties have actually done that?
The car rental sales tax, Phoenix was able to successfully.
Oh, I believe the town manager was talking about the car rental sales tax with City of Phoenix. That was in the last year and a half or two, I think, and that was challenged up to the Supreme Court.
I guess I'm suggesting that for something that's as onerous as the zoning legislation, trying to define what parties are injured, I'm not us, but maybe the league or somebody, and see who might have standing to actually go to court over it.
You know, and one thing to raise, that's certainly a valid question. With respect to that particular bill, I will note, and maybe Mayor has some additional information too, that that was held in committee. It didn't actually receive a hearing, and in fact, one of the co-sponsors of that bill was one of the ones who pulled it and said that it's going to go back to the stakeholder process. So for that one will not be heard very likely in the form that it took. So that's on that particular bill, extremely positive.
I can think of lots of others, but that's the,
I
that's
agree.
that's the
Yes.
worst one.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the property values, like if that one went through, people's property values would be affected, and then you get to the Prop 207, and so I think there would be probably people of standing that would go with that. I want to mention too, the short-term rental bills, the three of them, that are really good, and we're supporting them all, and one of them really got out of committee, and Representative Kavanaugh is really helping and on that. You know, his bill is literally one of the leagues, so we'll keep our eye on that. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a correction for something that I had said earlier this evening, so I want to make sure that I'm giving out the correct information. A quorum of the council is 4, and in fact, more than 4 could have attended the meeting, but we wouldn't have been able, I'm talking about the planning and zoning meeting. I said anything over 2, so I want to correct myself. It is 4. And we would, if we did attend, we would not be allowed to speak on any subject matter, or else that would be an open meeting law violation, and we would have to post it. So I want to stand corrected on the record. I said 2, it is 4. So thank God for residents who want to check me on my facts. So thank you to the resident who said I was wrong. And Bob, you don't get to say I'm an idiot in the newspaper this week. And that's it.
Any direction or motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye, thank you.